The first chill of early winter clung to Sarah's jacket as she lifted Emily gently from the back seat of their rusted minivan. 7 years old but lighter than any child should be, Emily wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck as Sarah balanced her on her hip. They were parked outside a low brick building with peeling paint that read Parker's Orthotics and Braces in faded letters. Sarah looked at the sign, exhaled slowly, and whispered to her daughter that maybe, just maybe, today would be different than all the other appointments that ended in disappointment and quiet tears. Inside, the air smelled faintly of machine oil and warm plastic. Shelves crowded every wall, stacked with boxes, molds, and half-finished leg braces in all sizes. Mr. Parker, a silver-haired man in his late 60s, looked up from his workbench, his reading glasses perched at the tip of his nose. He offered them a gentle smile, the kind that made Sarah's shoulders drop just a little. Emily clung to her mother's coat, her bright eyes darting nervously around. The small, cluttered room that somehow felt safer than the sterile hospitals they'd grown used to. Sarah explained Emily's story for what felt like the 100th time. The birth defect, the surgeries they couldn't afford, the braces that pinched or slipped off her skinny legs, the way the big city specialists always ended their meetings with soft apologies and stiff bills. Mr. Parker listened without interrupting, occasionally glancing at Emily, who now sat on a small stool beside her mother's chair. He knelt in front of Emily, his old knees popping quietly as he settled down to her eye level. He asked if he could measure her legs, his voice warm and gentle. Emily nodded shyly. Sarah held her breath as Mr. Parker unbuckled her daughter's tiny shoes and gently lifted her pant legs. Emily flinched when his cold measuring tape touched her skin but giggled when he told her it tickled. Sarah watched him carefully. Record each measurement in a battered notebook, the pages worn thin with decades of similar notes for other children whose parents came here with empty wallets and a heart full of desperate hope. Mr. Parker's assistant, a kind woman named Denise, brought over a tray of colorful plastic samples. "Which one do you like?" Mr. Parker asked, spreading out bright colors like a magician performing a trick. Emily's tiny finger immediately tapped the purple one, her favorite color since she learned how to say the word. Denise laughed softly and scribbled down the choice while Mr. Parker winked at Emily and promised her that her new brace would be purple and strong, just like her. Sarah let out a breath she didn't know she was holding, blinking back tears as her daughter's face lit up for the first time in weeks. Over the next week, Sarah's evenings revolved around the tiny workshop. After finishing her shift at the diner, she'd drive to Parker's shop, Emily, strapped in her car seat in the back, singing quietly to her stuffed bear. Mr. Parker worked late hours just for them, adjusting plastic molds, sanding down sharp edges, measuring Emily's legs again and again to make sure every piece fit just right. Emily sat beside him, legs dangling from a tall stool, watching wide-eyed as he showed her how each tool worked. Sometimes Emily would fall asleep in the corner of the shop, curled up with her bear under an old blanket Denise kept in back for kids like her. Sarah would sit quietly on a stool, her palms pressed together, staring at her daughter and trying not to count the bills in her wallet in her head. Mr. Parker never once asked for a payment up front. He only asked Sarah to keep bringing Emily in, to make sure they got it right, to make sure this brace would finally do what all the expensive ones never did, help Emily stand on her own feet. When the brace was finally ready, it was a Saturday afternoon. A pale winter sun slipped through the workshop's dusty windows, catching specks of sawdust, floating in the air like tiny fireflies. Emily sat on a wide bench, legs swinging, while Mr. Parker gently strapped the brace onto her left leg first. The purple plastic gleamed against her soft leggings. He checked every buckle twice, adjusting the soft foam lining so it wouldn't rub her skin. Raw. Denise placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder, whispering that this was the moment they'd all been working for. Emily's heart pounded so loudly she was sure her mom could hear it. Mr. Parker gently lifted her down from the bench, her little legs trembling under her weight. Sarah knelt on the cold concrete floor, arms outstretched, her eyes wet before Emily even took her first step. Mr. Parker's strong hands supported Emily's elbows as she leaned forward, her toes curling inside her small sneakers. One tiny foot slid forward, then another. She wobbled, dangerously, but her mother's arms were there, steady, waiting to catch her. The workshop fell silent except for Emily's soft giggle. She stood upright, eyes wide with shock and delight, clinging to her mother's shoulders as she balanced on her purple brace. Denise covered her mouth to keep from sobbing too loudly. Mr. Parker stepped back, wiping his glasses on his shirt as his own eyes watered behind them. Sarah pressed her forehead against her daughter's and whispered, "You did it, baby, you really did it." Emily's giggles filled the room, echoing off the shelves of tools and scraps of plastic. Word spread through the small town like a warm breeze through an open window. Sarah's co-workers slipped her extra tips. When she came in for her shift, her neighbor left a bag of groceries at her front door without a note. The pastor at the old brick church mentioned Emily in his Sunday sermon. They all knew the story of the single mom who never gave up and the little girl who took her first steps in a purple brace built by a man whose shop most people had driven past without noticing for years. Emily kept practicing every evening. Sarah would park their van in the same spot, help her daughter out, and carry her inside if she was too tired to walk all the way. Mr. Parker tweaked the brace each time, adding a new strap here, sanding a rough edge there, making sure Emily stayed comfortable. Emily's confidence grew, faster than her steps. She learned to balance her weight on the stronger side, lift her knee just enough, and push forward. Sarah caught her every time she stumbled, whispering that one day she'd run. Sometimes Emily would fall asleep in the van on the drive home, her head resting against the window, the purple brace gleaming under the parking lot lights when Sarah carried her inside. Those nights, Sarah would tuck her in, kiss her forehead, and sit at the edge of her bed, staring at her tiny legs wrapped in soft blankets. She would close her eyes and let herself dream bigger than she had in years. A school, hallway, a playground, maybe a dance recital. Tiny moments she'd never dared believe could belong to Emily. A week before Christmas, Sarah walked into the shop to find Mr. Parker adjusting a brand new set of braces. The same purple but stronger, sleeker, lighter. He'd found a donor, he explained, an old friend who believed in what he did. Sarah tried to thank him, but he waved her off, saying that hope shouldn't come with a price tag. Emily watched from her stool, hugging her bear tightly, her eyes darting between her mom and the man who'd given her the best gift she'd ever receive, hope wrapped in purple plastic. Christmas morning arrived with a soft blanket of snow outside their small apartment window. Sarah stood at the stove, pouring pancake batter onto a sizzling pan, while Emily sat at the table, her purple brace peeking out from under her pajama pants. She swung her feet back and forth, humming her favorite holiday tune while hugging her stuffed bear tight. Sarah stole glances at her daughter, feeling an ache in her chest so deep it was almost sweet. An ache she never wanted to let go of because it reminded her they still had hope. After breakfast, Sarah dressed Emily in her warmest coat and carefully buckled her into the back seat of their minivan. They had an appointment at Parker's shop, not for repairs, but for something special. Mr. Parker wouldn't explain over the phone. The roads were slick with fresh snow, but Sarah's grip on the steering wheel was steady. She kept glancing at Emily in the mirror, the little girl giggling as she drew smiley faces on the foggy window with her finger. They pulled into the same spot in front of Parker's Orthotics, the old sign now strung with a simple string of Christmas lights. Inside, the shop was warm and smelled of cinnamon and fresh coffee. Mr. Parker greeted them with a wink and a small gift bag that he pressed into Emily's hands. She peeked inside and gasped when she saw a tiny purple keychain shaped like her brace. She clutched it tight, holding it up for her mom to see. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, but blinked them away. Mr. Parker led them to the back room, where Denise waited with a camera and a soft blanket spread on the floor like a tiny indoor playground. Today wasn't about adjustments or new straps. Today was about trying something new, a pair of small orthotic shoes that Mr. Parker had made to work with Emily's brace. He slipped them on her feet, buckled the straps, and checked the fit. Twice. Then he stepped back, nodding for Sarah to kneel down in front of her. "Daughter." Emily took a deep breath and reached for her mother's shoulders. Sarah braced herself, heart pounding, as Emily pushed herself upright. She balanced there, standing straight and strong, her little legs steady on the cold floor. One step, then another. Emily giggled when her feet made soft thuds on the blanket. Sarah gasped when she realized Emily wasn't leaning on her arms. For the first time, her daughter stood and stepped all on her own, her legs straight, her braces holding her steady, the tiny shoes squeaking slightly as she shuffled forward. Denise snapped photos, her hands shaking. Mr. Parker leaned against his workbench, arms crossed over his chest, a proud grin pulling at the corners of his weathered mouth. Sarah's tears fell freely, now unstoppable, landing on Emily's soft brown hair. They stayed in that back room for over an hour. Emily took dozens of small steps, each one stronger than the last. She only stopped when her legs began to tremble with exhaustion. Sarah scooped her up, pressing her close, whispering how proud she was. They thanked Mr. Parker over and over. He only nodded, wiping his eyes, when he thought no one was looking. Back home, Sarah called her parents, her sister, even her old high school friend she hadn't spoken to in years, telling everyone about Emily's first real steps. Word traveled fast through their small neighborhood. Neighbors dropped by with home-cooked meals and warm blankets. Someone left a brand-new snow jacket on their front porch in Emily's favorite color, purple, of course. Sarah's manager at the diner handed her an envelope with an extra Christmas bonus tucked inside, whispering that everyone was rooting for her little girl. That night, Sarah tucked Emily into bed, kissing her forehead and promising that this was only the beginning. There would be more steps, longer walks, maybe even dancing one day under the open sky. January brought biting cold winds and grey skies, but Sarah refused to let that dampen the warmth growing inside her small apartment. Every week, they visited Mr. Parker for checkups. Emily's brace held strong, her balance improved, and Sarah learned how to check the straps herself, tightening them gently before each practice session. Sometimes Emily would stumble, landing on the soft rug in their living room. Each fall brought a flash of panic to Sarah's chest. But Emily only giggled, got up and tried. Again, her spirit was stronger than the brace around her leg. One Friday evening, as snow piled up outside, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, sorting bills, while Emily sat nearby, coloring a picture of herself in a big purple dress. There was a knock on the door. Sarah opened it to find Mr. Parker standing there, his breath fogging in the cold air. Holding a small wrapped box, he stepped inside, stamping snow off his boots, and handed the box to Emily. Inside was a tiny charm bracelet with a single silver charm, a little leg brace, delicate and shining. Emily squealed with delight, hugging Mr. Parker tight. Sarah asked him why he'd come so late on such a cold night. Mr. Parker explained that his old friend, the donor who'd paid for Emily's new braces, wanted to meet her. He was coming to town the following week. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She'd never met anyone who'd helped them without asking for something in return. That night, as she tucked Emily into bed, Sarah lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of person would give so much to a child they'd never met. When the day came, Sarah dressed Emily in her best dress, the purple one, of course, and drove them to the same little shop. Mr. Parker was waiting outside with a tall man in a sharp winter coat. He looked out of place among the cluttered tools and old wooden sign, but when he knelt to greet Emily, his voice was warm and his smile gentle. He introduced himself as Thomas. He told Emily that he'd once needed Mr. Parker's help too, long ago when he was a child, just like her. Thomas asked Emily to show him how she walked. Emily, a little shy at first, clutched her mom's hand, but then stepped forward on her own. Thomas clapped when she reached him, lifting her up and spinning her carefully so her braces didn't slip. He told Sarah that he'd be covering any new braces Emily needed as she grew. He handed Mr. Parker a check to upgrade his old machines and buy better materials. Before he left, Thomas crouched beside Emily and whispered something that made her giggle and hug him tight around the neck. Driving home, Emily fell asleep in the back seat, her purple brace propped on the edge of her booster. Sarah watched her through the mirror, her heart overflowing with something warm and bright. Hope, relief, gratitude all wrapped together like a gift she never thought she'd open. She didn't know what the future would hold for her daughter. More surgeries, new braces, therapy sessions, but she knew they wouldn't face any of it alone. There were people in the world who still cared, people who didn't need a reason to help. Spring arrived slowly, melting the snowbanks and filling the sidewalks with puddles for Emily to splash through. Sarah found an old pair of rain boots, cutting them open just enough so they'd slip over the brace. Emily laughed every time she stomped through a puddle, her mother's hand steady in hers. Some days were harder than others, falls and scrapes and tears that reminded Sarah how fragile hope could feel. But every time Emily stood up again, her little hands brushing off dirt, her purple brace gleaming in the sunlight like a promise. By the time the school year ended, Emily could walk from the minivan to her classroom door without needing her mother's steady arm. Her teacher sent Sarah videos of Emily showing her classmates how her brace worked, explaining it proudly, her tiny voice carrying more confidence than Sarah had ever dreamed she'd hear. One afternoon, Sarah found a note in Emily's backpack, a simple drawing of a stick figure with a purple leg brace, and the words, "I want to run someday." Sarah pressed it to her chest, her eyes stinging with tears. Years later, Sarah would tell this story again and again. She'd tell it to new moms, sitting alone in hospital waiting rooms, to strangers who stopped them on the sidewalk to ask about the girl with the purple brace. She'd tell it to Emily when her daughter forgot how far she'd come. More, and each time Sarah would remember that cold winter morning when she first carried her tiny girl into an old shop with cracked paint and a faded sign, and how inside they'd found more than braces and tools. They'd found hope stitched together with kindness.